Hey guys, it's Matt. In about a minute, we'll start Chapter 30. If you remember from last week, Chapter 29 was completely cut in half. Just completely went off the book for the last 20 or 25 minutes, talking about that situation that arises where the knot milk seemingly can harm people, or much worse, without having to operate behind a trick. And that was the first time that idea was ever explored in depth. I've got a lot of comments and emails that have helped me out on that, and we'll continue to talk about and revise that over time. Also, I wanted to mention to you briefly, I came upon that strange song, everybody should wear sunscreen. Anybody over 30 probably remembers it. Remember that? Ladies and gentlemen of the class of 99, wear sunscreen. If I could give you one bit of advice, sunscreen would be it. I'm like, this world is such a fraud. This guy says if I could give you only one bit of advice, that's it, that I know it will work for you, wear sunscreen. Other than that, it's just my ramblings and my stupid, go to New York once before it makes you hard, not literally, all that bullshit. And I think this world is so backwards. The one bit of advice he puts all his chips on is the worst advice you could give anyone. Wear a sunscreen. Put a toxic chemical on your skin that blocks the source of life in the solar system, that blocks nutrition that scientists don't even know about, vitamin D. The sun is so important. It gives you much more than vitamin D. Sunscreen, if I could give a commencement speech, I would say, ladies and gentlemen of the class of 2023, you're screwed. Other than that, don't ever wear sunscreen. It would just be the opposite of this Baz Luhrmann villain, although I do like the Leonardo DiCaprio da Vinci Romeo and Juliet. The guy that did the sunscreen song, Baz Luhrmann, is the guy that did the Romeo and Juliet movie, and then a lot of other bad movies too, like Australia. Chapter 30. Have you noticed the amount of times Occam's razor has been referenced in our society, say in the past 20 years? I believe that Occam's razor is a deception in matters of importance. Occam's razor, as a reminder, is that notion that in most cases, the simplest explanation is typically the correct one. The exact definition is searching for explanations with the smallest possible set of elements, or no more assumptions should be made than are necessary. Occam's razor, the way it's presented to us by science, though, is not only about keeping things simple. That's the guise that it hides behind. Occam's razor forces one to choose the simple explanation, but also pick one that's offered to us from authority or from an official source. The simple choices of Occam's razor are food choices from its menu, from a knot milk menu. Ew. The explanations are pre-approved by the knot milk, like the two presidential candidate retards. The modern notion of Occam's razor is a restaurant that only serves their favorite foods. Sure, the principle stresses simple, but the simple choices must come from behind door number 1 or door number 2, and those doors are on its ministry game show. You must not offer a door of your own. Don't go thinking over there. Come back to our doors. In most cases, and especially with matters of importance, which means figuring out this world or figuring out yourself, using Occam's razor to find the explanation will always generate a result that is approved by the knot milk. No one has ever evoked Occam's razor and then followed with an explanation that was both simple and something that could be labeled unusual, or from our perspective, something that could come from a, quote, conspiracy theorist. In society, simple must be paired with pedestrian and never fall outside the bookends of the knot milk. It constantly invokes Occam's razor, and that attitude on the masses keeps any big thinking in check. Dave, yeah, Matt, I've been thinking about the sun, and I'm not so sure that they're correct in what they say it is. I have some alternative theories as to what could explain what the sun is. Do you want to hear about them? What? Matt, Occam's razor. All right, what's the matter with you? Look at the sun right now, Matt. Look up at it. Okay. Does it look like a burning thing to you? Well, you kinda. Put your arm out. Do you feel its warmth? Well, yeah. Well, that means it's a burning thing, millions of miles away. The simplest explanation is always best, Matt. You're not one of those people, are you? If one invokes Occam's razor, in most cases, then, their simple explanation has to first be approved by the authority of this world. An Occam's razor explanation is simple, but it comes with fine print. Occam's razor is yet another way the knot milk hides truth. How, say, the moon formed, if you really dive into the subject, is still considered to be somewhat of a mystery by the so-called experts. If you read and look at the fine print, you can find out, like on page 95, that, we might not agree. But what do they lead with? Leading theory essentially evokes Occam's razor, as usual, to bind one's thinking and to support their bullshit and the way they want most people believing. Matt, you ask about the moon, I see. See, as the solar system was being formed, a massive planetary body struck what we know of as the Earth, and little pieces were scattered all around the solar system. And see, over millions of years, Matt, they all came together to form the moon. Occam's razor would tell you that's most likely what happened, Matt. We'll admit there are other possibilities, but don't you think that simplest one is best? Well, no, simplest isn't best here at all. I know I'm not supposed to think this way, but I have to say it. If there were all these little pieces after the collision or something, what was the center of gravity? Where was this mass at the center that brought all the little pieces together per gravity when there wasn't any mass at all to bring the pieces together? Isn't that the way they tell us gravity works? And why did it come together in a perfect circle? Why not something that looks like a Chernobyl potato? It doesn't make sense that all the pieces then came together in a perfect circle, where if you look in your eyes like Da Vinci couldn't even hand draw a better circle. Simplest doesn't work. You're questioning known science, Matt, to the principal's office with you. In almost all cases, Occam's razor limits thinking, but it can also be misleading and hide real answers. To explain things, the narrow little scientist only has one toy box to work with, so the answer just must come from inside his toy box, because that scientist, you see, is in a body that has no access to 99% of the information this universe affords. That's all his senses will give him. The term Occam's razor sounds cool, and that makes the dummies that invoke it feel smart. The brainwashed eggheads working in the universities don't even know what the moon is. And once these people believe there is no other possibility but rock and dust or something that can be landed on, well, they've kind of put their dumbasses in a box there too, haven't they? The moon is made of cheese is far less limiting. I'm not joking. Saying you might not believe it, but at least it gets you out of the box. It lets you go into other places, keeping on the table that the moon is actually made of cheese. Then you're no longer in the little box. At least you're open to other possibilities, you scientific sons of bitches. Let's look at this example. If I start a long scientific career researching wind patterns, I'm kind of screwed if I start out on day one believing the wind is, in fact, the nymph Echo in a cave somewhere lamenting over her lost love, Narcissus. That's actually the origin of the legend. She was so distraught because that arrogant son of a bitch was staring at himself in the lake, looking at his reflection. He died, he wouldn't eat or something like that. The nymph Echo went off to a cave to lament. There you get the echo, 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 echo. That's where that shit came from. That's where it came from. But again, I'm trying to set up wind farms. I'm a scientist that studies wind. If my opening day, I believe that Echo is literally the source of the wind. Maybe they did believe that back in ancient Greece. I don't know. That's the legend. It doesn't matter. If I start out there, I'm kind of screwed. What good are my wind farm ideas if the nymph Echo isn't really in a cave generating my wind? How do I get her to lament more over Narcissus, thus giving more power to my turbines on the wind farm? Heck, we don't even know what cave she's in, but we'll find her. The ancient Greeks invoked Occam's razor, I guess. What's less complicated? A simple story about the wind that everybody knows? Or some complicated exothermic math talking about the transfer of heat on the Earth's surface? That's not Occam's razor simple. That's complicated horse shit. Therefore, it must be wrong. Okay, it's not the greatest example, but it demonstrates if you're researching something, if your initial premise is incorrect, what the sun is, what the moon is, what the wind is, anything, if your initial premise is incorrect, then you can't do anything after that. Everything else is ruined. What Occam's razor does, via the way the Not Nilk wields it, is to get people thinking wrong right from the very start. Matt, why are you saying all this strange stuff about World War I and how it came to be? I mean, we know the simple story. The Arch Dick Ferdinand was shot, and the war happened shortly after that. Of course, it stemmed from the Gavrilo Princip shooting of Arch Dick Ferdinand. Well, what else is it? Why are you going off of Occam's razor? The assassination of one man nobody liked, of course, led to World War I. What do you think it is? In almost all cases, applying Occam's razor is incredibly limiting and squashes imaginative thought. The Knock loves to get powerful beings to limit themselves, doesn't it? The entire society is rigged to do that to us. The number of times my friend Tony has cited Occam's razor, to me, proves it's a Knock tactic and seemingly part of the download. When Tony calls forth Occam's razor, it's an attempt to put conspiracy people like me in a cage. Again, related to any big topic in this world, I'm handed a menu of 1 or 2 dinner specials, and the answer just has to be one simple thing or the other, not the strange thing that I'm putting forth. My weird ideas didn't come from Tony's simple boxes, the one he got from the BBC. My explanations can also be simple, but the defenders of reality, like my friend Tony, are Karukan plantation overseers of both the definition and application of Occam's razor, and they won't let me cite my own simple explanations because my explanations are not pre-approved by the experts of this world. Who do those experts unknowingly serve? The Knock, of course. If they didn't, they wouldn't be experts. Think about it. They'd be homeless. Hey, do you think J.D. Power would actually say something that the powers of this world didn't want said in terms of whatever their reviews are, or ratings of cars, or whatever the hell they do? This came out of nowhere 35, 40 years ago, the J.D. Power rating service. What a joke! Ratings and reviews across all industries, where almost assuredly they were all set up by the powers that be that are being judged. Like Rotten Tomatoes is most likely, of course, of Hollywood itself. The girl who had the independent film rating service right now is in a soup kitchen line in San Francisco, put out of business. When the movie Contact reintroduced Occam's razor to millions of people, as Jodie Foster was pretending to like men, the Knock was quite pleased and ran with it. For our group to truly move from the bog or the distraction into part 2, the work, then certain principles must not be violated by our group any longer. The first principle for a graduate involves this scenario. Asshole Dark comes along and through its news puts out what happened somewhere in the world. Whatever the breaking news may be, it doesn't matter. Maybe another disappearing airplane, not that bullshit again, but they'll recycle it all back again as they recycle everything back. Almost like a rule of this reality, or how it gives itself away, at least from our perspective, is as we look upon this big news, as usual, it will mostly seem like a bunch of bullshit to us, or at least many aspects will be a complete joke to anybody that wears our same armor. For 20 years, the truth community has been programmed by the Knock to look closely at an event and analyze it to see if what happened is real or cake in a lake. That in and of itself is the game it wants us playing, and it must stop. It wants you to begin the analysis phase, and for those that don't do the analyzing themselves, then it wants you turning to channels like mine for a take on the event. How many times has this sort of thing happened over the years? Matt, I'm so glad you're talking about this to see what your take is on this. See, if we don't give a shit anymore about what it's presenting, then you shouldn't give a shit about what my take on it is. It all should be flushed. The default is simple. Everything big in this world is illegitimate. What do you mean, everything? I mean, you mean like a lot of things. No. Everything that it pushes as being big and important, as remember our formula, if it's pushing it as important, it's illegitimate bullshit and cake in a lake. If it doesn't really bother with it, then it's probably true. Matt, why do you think it wants us in, as you say, this endless analysis phase? What evidence of there is that it wants us doing the analysis? I would think it doesn't want to be found out. You have no proof. Yeah, there's like a lot of proof that it wants us analyzing every bit of it. And in some respects, as long as you don't get to the final truth, it doesn't care to be found out. Not one bit. Here's one of the big ones. It makes mistakes on purpose to draw us in. It has put thousands of bogus mistakes on purpose out over 20 years to draw us in further into its bog. We see this at this point. It's 100%. We are enticed to play its game. If we are drawn into the investigation, we have lost that round to it. Period. Well, what if we really find out after the investigation what happened and we're correct in our interpretation? Who cares? We've still lost that round, even if we're correct about every bit of it. If you sit down to play chess with it, you have lost. If you reach for a pawn to do the first move, you have lost. It doesn't matter. It will declare you the winner at the end of the chess match, like Johnny in the fiddle competition. The moment he started playing against the devil, he lost. That dumb son of a beach thinks he beat the devil. He didn't. He was drawn in. He lost. What you mean mistakes on purpose? What evidence you got of that? You got answer? What you talking about? We have like 1,000 things at this point. For example, the ribby ribby moment. I guess we caught them. We sleuths. They went live. They made a mistake. They could have done a 7-hour delay. They could have filmed it in 1975, but they went live and we caught them. Oh, they didn't mean for that to get out. No. An inflated tire at the bottom. Matt, you going to talk about that again? It's been 6 months. I should be talking about every single time I make a video. An inflated tire at the bottom of South Tower. That would be what you would call a mistake on purpose. By the way, guys, off the book, there's actually been people in our community that actually try to explain how that could be possible. How a piece of rubber with air in it could pass through the 40,000 degrees of an explosion, pass through hundreds of tons of steel and shard and rebarb and glass. And then I saw Pam once hit a curb at 8 or 9, 10 miles an hour, and the tire went pop. Well, Matt, those plain tires are a lot more. Oh, yeah, the Goodyear rubber on that is complete. People tried to justify it. They had to have been trolls. If anybody would believe that an inflated tire could survive what they showed us, they literally would have to be one of the stupidest people on the face of the earth. But I think most of the mistakes on purpose have actually come on the ISS with those legitimate astronauts. So that's from Armageddon. I saw that recently. You're not astronauts? No, we're oil drillers. The cosmonauts and astronauts on the ISS. See, when they go to reach for something and it's not really there, but then they're doing the CGI, and then George W. Bush or George H.W. Bush was wheeled in front of that blue screen, and then we sleuths caught him, and they couldn't possibly prep what goes out before it goes out to our community, and then we just catch him in the mistakes. Guys, we could do a whole channel of just this. Obviously, it wants to draw us in. It has been quite successful in doing it, and it needs to stop. Even if a real understanding could come through research and putting the time in, and we've demonstrated almost certainly cannot come by putting extra time in research, and it doesn't bring any understanding, it brings further confusion. That's the way this reality is designed, at least from the dark aspect. It doesn't matter if we could ever be successful. Real people at this point do not need to know any details any longer if you're with us here in this Amish classroom, because we see finally the big picture. Now, we don't know everything, but we're looking down at 100,000 feet. We're finally out of the bog and the weeds, and we see things much differently. No specific event should be researched again, ever. That focuses our attention, if we look at it, outward toward the screen. It's a violation of the principle called worry about yourself. It gives the screen energy, the stuff like loosh we've been talking about. You have to reach your hand out of your heart-based reality bubble and shake hands with its slimy tentacle. You have the ability to keep it out. It needs you to feed. Worry about yourself in part 2 is the only thing it does not want us doing, because it in no way involves attention going outward toward the screen. A 5th grade truther who is deep in investigation is rooting in some way to the dark reality, is in some way creating their own Jacob Marley chains. And remember the stuffed Lenin, don't look back? They are looking back, intentionally so. We were all in the heavy analysis phase from, say, 2008 to 2016. No longer, I hope. Maybe we needed to waste our time on details in the bog back then, but not anymore. I believe it was necessary to spend time in the bog for most of us, at least for a while. The Knot-Nelk hopes to trap you there permanently, like quicksand and then cement. Everything from the screen's outer ring is fake to some degree or another, no matter what actually happened on the ground. Let me repeat that. Everything that comes from the screen's outer ring is fake to some degree, no matter what happened at the school or across the North Korean or South Korean border. Even if someone was really banged in a certain event, it is in a way still fake because the entire outer ring of reality is fake, and the outer ring coordinates what you would call real events on the ground. We've recently been looking at situations where seemingly the Not Nilk or its minions can harm someone, or worse, much worse, without having to operate behind a trick. If we want to go back and look at World War I, World War II, and some people, they're rising up out of their chair now. Those soldiers knew what they were doing. Fine, bad example. Forget the soldiers then. How about the 75-year-old woman in a rocking chair in, Minsk or Stalingrad reading Uncle Vanya, and some kind of shell came through the damn window. She should have known? Was she that she was harmed? Her book, Uncle Vanya, got blown to pieces. The book did, papers everywhere, and she was kind of right there with it. She was harmed. There wasn't no trick the Not Nilk need to operate behind. But if you're paddling up the river, it's very wide, but you want to find its source, where everything comes together, where it starts. If you're paddling up the river with Pocahontas, we all get to the same place. We arrive at it's a boss level in a video game, Mr. Fake. Now again, what happened? Lots of deaths during World War I and World War II, military and civilian. Lots of direct harm without having to operate behind a trick, seemingly. But then it's still fake if you search for the original source. Nobody here believes the reason for World War I, as they put it in the textbook, is the real reason. There's just as many problems with World War II. Like, who built Hitler's war machine? There should have been no money. They were coming off the incredibly punitive sanctions of World War I after the Treaty of Versailles was signed in the Hall of Mirrors. And then we heard about the, that hyperinflation and that Weimar, whatever, the hyperinflation. You need to take in your 87,000 wheelbarrows of money to get one loaf of bread and all that bullshit. It should have been decimated. Where'd the factories come from? In today's dollars, the Hitler war machine, including the building out of most of the Autobahns, or at least the beginning of the construction of the Autobahns during the 30s, it would have taken in today's dollars $500 billion. Where'd the money come from? I thought they're supposed to be completely sanctioned and Weimar wheelbarrowed for a loaf of bread type situation. Well, the New Deal was going on in the United States to come out of the Great Depression, but this is supposed to be a sound country that had no sanctions, the top country in the world from a financial standpoint. We could understand, at least from a stretch, how the United States could pull off its New Deal. What was the New Deal for Germany, where they were pumping out 2-to-1 aircraft, 2-to-1 tanks, when compared to the United States and the UK and the Allies? Well, obviously, both sides were supported by the old money in the same exact group. So you have just as many problems with World War II. So as you find the source, even though real things happened, real people were harmed, you can still make the argument that the source of everything here is always illegitimate and cooked up and in a way fake. By this rationale, even if the North Koreans, quote, really invade the South and charge down towards Seoul, it's still, by a certain definition, fake. Matt, how can that be, though, if the battlefield has real casualties and real deaths in the battlefield? And how can that be? Because, see, as you move up the levels of where the source of all these shenanigans are coming from, as you move up the levels towards the screen, you run into the same boss man. In our video game, we'll call him Mr. Fake. If there was an invasion by the North ordered by Not Nilk, there could be an actual bloodbath on the 38th parallel, but we'd soon find, of course, as usual, that the reason for the war itself was not legitimate, and we'd find the same creeps coordinating both sides, etc., etc. It would play out the same way, of course. Sure, though, there was a bloody battle. There were real people harmed, but it's only real in a certain sense. It's fake in another. Just because somebody was actually harmed or worse, that does not make it real by my definition. If Kim Jong-un is not a real Duncan employee, but a puppet of a one-world system, then it's still fake what happened, no matter how many soldiers were killed on the battlefield or at the South Korean border. If you go up the creepy org chart, you will always run into the etheric boss man of this reality, Mr. Fake. We have another name for the screen in Not Nilk. So what do the details at the lower level matter, even if there was a real battle? They don't matter. Leave them all behind. And you know, one of the issues I have with the first grade truther, the spitballers in the back, who threw that spitball? Those type of people in the back, I think they take it too far. In terms of the sliding scale of fake and their definition of fake, they take it too far. They start with the mall events and the school events, and everybody's an actor. No trigger was ever pulled, Matt. Everything is completely fake. No shots were ever fired from now all the way back to Lexington and Concord. And it's all actors. But does that make sense? Let's look around at the history of our adversary, this thing we call Not Milk that we now call Mr. Fake. Does it have a long history of harming people or worse, seemingly without having to operate behind a trick? Has it been nasty for a long time? I mean, let's just look at some of the examples. Why should we have to do this? But you think any civilians were harmed in Vietnam during the Vietnam War? And remember, the French, those bastards were in there for like 8 to 10 years or more prior to when the Americans got there, basically fighting their war. Do you think civilians were harmed? Just pick a war. How about Mao Zedong's Cultural Revolution? Anybody harmed there? So why does the first grade truther believe all these events go down and nobody could potentially be harmed? Okay, we're getting a little way too much in the weeds here. You know, the most important part of coming out of this segment is announcing to the Not Milk, and why don't you announce it with me? You can call it Mr. Fake, call it what you want, that you need to operate behind a trick. And if you harm people without operating behind a trick, that is a severe violation. We'll continue to talk about that and what we've been talking about. Maybe it only needs to operate behind a trick to a certain type of individual or an entity, potentially people like us. I don't know. We'll talk about it a lot going further. But to real people who are ready to finally quell their truth or addictions, to finally get out of the bog and dust themselves off, the point is we can skip all this research on the ground and never go back to it and move our focus, at least briefly, up the org chart to find the source of the fraud, to find the boss level and Mr. Fake. And once we understand that to a certain degree, the graduate level truthers, of course, are already there. Most of us are already there. You can see it's repeating themes. You can see what it's doing at 10 or 100,000 feet looking down. Once you see its goal is just a few sentences, it's the same thing every time, to move a real spiritual being off of its path and confusing it so it doesn't understand itself. Then we don't need to look at it anymore. Once we have 2 sentences, we don't need to look at it anymore? Yes. The process for real people to come out the other side as somewhat successful is 3 steps. Now, again, this is the process for real people like you and me. I don't know what everyone else is. Let's look at our friends and many of our family. They have no chance of coming out the other side because they don't even agree 1% with 1 step. So how are they going to ever do the 3 steps? So I can just say from our perspective, guys. Okay, step 1, we generally notice there's something not right with the world. What the news is saying here doesn't quite make sense. This presentation by government about what they say there's something wrong with it. I need to investigate it. Pulls us into the weeds, pulls us into the bog, okay? I was hardcore here for 10 years. Every mall event, every school event, this presentation by NASA, analyze, break down. It's thrilled when any of us goes and does that, no matter what we find out in terms of our research. Okay, we've determined that. That's step 1. This is like similar to the graduated animal farms. You need to progress to step 2. That's saying, well, wait a second. Every event is not on its own. There's something coordinating this somehow. Something that stands in the shadows. Mr. Fake, Not Milk, Screen. In a way, it's all working together to do something without each segment not knowing the other segment or not even being aware that it's working for a whole, going up to 10,000 feet, looking down, then 100,000 feet, looking down. Then you're not in the details of the weeds. You're not in the details of what happened at the mall event or the school event. You're saying there's something evil here, a Christian would call Satan, and what is it out to do to a real person and block its spiritual journey, etc. That's step 2. Now, I think it's still thrilled if we stay stuck at step 2. In step 1, we're giving our energy and attention to the screen, but through examining the details event by event. Step 2, we're still giving our attention and energy, where attention goes, energy flows to the screen itself, maybe even more directly, because we're looking at the bad guy itself, what it's up to, the not milk itself. Okay, we will continue to do that because one of my jobs here is to pull 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th grade truthers through 12th grade, through graduate level. I'll continue to do that. Okay, it can get a little repetitive for graduate level truthers. I appreciate you still being here. Step 3, though, is not even analyzing it at all anymore, knowing its nature and just going on to do the work in the little time we have left called life. The work in part 2, worry about yourself activities. Thousands of things that the not milk can draw no direct energy or loosh from. 99% of our friends and family, or you could just say in general, the people around us, they don't even start step 1. The mall event, the school event, the presentation by now, everything here that's a fraud, fluoride is actually good for you in the water, bot, everything presented by authority and government is as it should be, and it might be a little corrupt at times, Matt, but they're working for you. They don't even see one aspect of the fraud, trick. They don't even get to the first step of the marathon. So how are they ever going to get to step 2? See the general coordination of the spiritual battle that's taking place in this snow globe, and how are they ever going to get to step 3? This, where we are right now, brings up a very interesting point as it was written up in a recent email to me by Zane. And this is not in the book. We need to explore this in detail, just like we did that topic in the last chapter. Zane says, or he would say in terms of what I just presented a minute ago, he'd say, okay, Matt, for our type of person, ultimately, what's the goal? To get to that step 3. The work, the worry about yourself activities, no more attention and energy to the not milk. That's the ultimate goal. So I think Zane would say per that email, I'm just reading between the lines, he can email me further and support this or say I'm getting his interpretation wrong. He would say all that matters is that final destination. So Matt, you got to where you are by initially going through the 3 steps that you outlined, seeing the not milk nastiness, seeing the trick, seeing the corruption, seeing how manipulative it can be and all the horrible things it does. And that's how you got to step 3. And you admit, Matt, yourself that you have a lot more work to do in terms of doing the worry about yourself activities and the work, and we're learning about it every day. But others potentially can get right to step 3 in other ways. Don't think for a second, Matt, that the only way to get to step 3 is by seeing the trick, by going through the same process that you went through, that many people listening went through. Maybe we are a different type of entity. Maybe that's why this role player exists in a certain way for us. Or you'll see in the next section, if we ever get to it, that what we interpret from the screen in terms of the reality it gives us could be in a way different than what those in the Ship of Fools or Tony interprets, etc. There's still reasons, guys, even if there are other ways to get to step 3 and other people are doing the work, most people in this world are still on the Ship of Fools. It's not like we're going to come to the conclusion that, no, everybody can get to step 3, and Matt, it's just your interpretation of reality, and nobody is more foolish than anyone else. No, I'm sorry, the people that believe in an inflated tire at the bottom and see that as completely legitimate, I mean, there are rules to this reality. If I have a pen in my hand, if I just let it go, it's not going to fly up and stick to the ceiling. I mean, they are missing basic parts of the trick that anybody should be seeing through. It's not good for anybody to have the U.S. At quote war in some sort of conflict 190 years out of a 200 and whatever 50 plus year existence. I mean, there are certain aspects of the trick that everybody should be seeing through. So let's just leave that aside. It's not like what we see is just as just as what my friend Tony sees. No, absolutely not. The people that will run out and vote next November 5th in the election, no. Our interpretations of this reality are not on equal footing, no. But there, as Zane's saying, there is other ways to get to step 3. This is maybe where religion comes in. Matt, if somebody can use Jesus, I don't mean use, I don't mean to be disparaging, but that path, get to step 3 to do what they need to do for themselves here, or whatever their spiritual self requires of them from here. If they can get there through Jesus, they didn't need to go through the bog and see through the mall events and the school events and see all the ugliness of how governments operate and how they steal rights. And the person's still where you are, Matt, and that's ultimate. And I can't argue with that. I don't know if I want to argue with that. I would say at this point, I can't argue with that. Maybe all those Shiny, happy people laugh. Those boot at the gas pump people. If someone might say to me, Matt, you son of a beach, they're doing the work. They're doing you had to go through this bog and all this shit and all this, see all this fraud and analyze Melvin P. and all. They didn't do that. They didn't need to do that. And they're probably doing more self-work than you're doing. You're still in a way, because I'm teaching an Amish classroom here, I'm focusing on the bog because I have to go back and do the screen exercises from time to time. So people may say that you get on the Buddha from the gas pump people. They got to it's okay. I'm leaving all interpretations open here. They're doing the work, the worry about yourself activities, without having to go and analyze every bit of the corruption and the fraud and the trick, and they cooked up wars on both sides. So what Zane is saying in this email, and he can email me again to help us out, is very interesting. And if I'm not going to, go back and see if what I just said made sense or re-record, let's just pause now and do a summary for anybody new or if you didn't follow what just happened there. Okay, where we are right now, what we're emerging into is all that matters. Leaving the analysis and the conspiracy addiction behind, the self-work, part 2, the worry about yourself activities. And if anybody's really new, what does that mean? Becoming a person that your 25-year-old self wouldn't recognize. Do you feel you existed before your birth? Most of us would say absolutely. We existed, obviously, before birth. And why did you come here? What are you doing here? What does your spiritual whole need from this experience? Yeah, the basic stuff like make sure you smell the roses, hug the trees, appreciate the color leaves and the trees are changing, and appreciate the beauty in this and see the beauty in that. And all the touchy-feely stuff, of course, but there's so much more. What does your spiritual whole need out of this experience? Are you in touch with it? Okay, this is what we're doing now. This can only be done, this important part, if you leave the analysis of Tartaria and all this bog crap behind. You see how the analysis of mud flood and all that stuff is kind of there to distract you from the only thing that's important? Okay, so we're finally here, right? We've come through a lot of crap. We've fallen for a lot of tricks. Zane's saying, okay, great. All you ex-conspiracy people that did all the research and watched the Ribby Bobby Bobby moment over and over again and made fun of it and analyzed it, you got to where you need to be. But Zane would probably say, don't think for a second that's the only path to get to where you are. The Buddha at the gas pump people. They could be right where you are. They could have been where you are 10 years ago, Matt. And no, they don't acknowledge the evil here and the bad element. And I still think they should. I mean, it's not like their reality is completely separate to mine. In their reality, there's still some gigantic behemoth Jabba the Hutt government taking 30 to 45% or up to 50% of everybody's paycheck, wasting it, just burning it. People have to work double just to make ends meet. All this ugly stuff is still going on. It's not like that doesn't exist in the reality, where the Turnpike Commission in Pennsylvania will get a $100 million grant for roads or whatever, and then it'll just go to corruption, just go away to nothing. That exists in their reality. They can call out the bad guy too. I'm not saying that it's completely righteous of them to ignore the bad guy, and I'm going to continue to get on them for that. But ultimately, if they're not focused on it, I can't argue with Zane. They could be ahead of us, way ahead of us, doing the work. And the only thing that's important, okay? I wish they would if everybody called out the bad guy, maybe the world would be a little less bad. But I see it a little bit different sense now. They could be ahead of us. Other types of people could be ahead of us. Maybe they started the work, part 2, 10 years earlier than, quote, we are doing it now, because they didn't waste time on the trick. It's very interesting. The trick, okay, it was our path to getting to where we are. And it seems like one of the repeating themes or immutable truths of this reality is to emerge as the beautiful butterfly. To emerge as the beautiful butterfly, you got to take a lot of shit as a caterpillar. Anybody just born, and then by the time they're 10, 15 years old, coming into their own, and they're just perfect, and they're wonderful, and they're doing the work? No, generally, you got to take a lot of shit, a lot of hard times. People are alcoholics, and they kick that addiction, and then people have abuse, or maybe what we went through was the horrible aspect of not milk, and the real messed up sons of bitches that pull the strings on this reality and put billions into really difficult situations and steal their money and put them into poverty and suffering. Seeing all that might have been necessary. This is why for a long time I've called these jerks necessary role players put into this reality for a reason. We seem to have needed that to become, I'm sorry, it's not the greatest example, the caterpillar, the butterfly. You try talking about this shit. Okay, Neo, let's just go to the Matrix, okay? He didn't just emerge as the one, wake up one day and fly up into the air. He had to go through a lot of shit, right? The tasty wheat horse shit. He had to be rescued from his cube job. He was in the Matrix and that metal bug floating around his stomach. They had to rip out of him and the blood fly. And then he had to go in the Nebuchadnezzar, cold and the frayed sweaters. And he went through a lot of horse shit, Neo. And then he emerged. He emerged as something greater. But he needed those tough times. I don't know what maybe the boot at the gas pump people have their own trials. They might say, I didn't need to study not milk and evil and corrupt governments. And here's what my trial was. And now I'm doing the work. I've emerged from that. So there's a lot of truth in what Zane is saying. He's saying, Matt, okay, this is your path. It's not going to be everybody's path. Maybe that's a reason why we can't ever talk about this sort of thing to family, friends, neighbors. But again, I take back some of the things I've said about the Buddha at the gas pump people. I still would like them to acknowledge the evil presence here that steals everybody's money and really harms a lot of people. We talked about the wars and the Mao Zedong Cultural Revolution and all the nasty thing it's done. So I don't like how they completely ignore it. But and they are finding their way to step 3 as we are emerging into the beautiful better. But look at my friend Tony. Look at your friends and family. Endless shopping and selfies and spending hours online and what car to lease next. And we need to move the family across country because I need that new job promotion. Getting up the corporate ladder is all that matters. They're completely fooled that most people, 99 or more %, it's not like we have our segment, the boot at the gas pump people, they're doing their thing and everybody's going to get to step 3. Almost nobody's getting to step 3. People around us are falling for the trick. One aspect of falling for the trick and why the trick should always be acknowledged is they put the things of this world at the forefront in terms of the metrics in measuring success. In terms of the 2 arms of the Vitruvian man, there's the physical side, ego, body, the things rooted here. And then there's a whole probably other aspect to us. The side not here, the spiritual side, some people call higher self, etc. 2 arms of the Vitruvian man, the people around us, friends and family. My friends, they don't even see that's a Vitruvian man with his arm cut off. Luke just got his wrist cut off. The whole arm has been, they don't think that spiritual side even exists. So yeah, how are those people, the masses, 99%, they're never going to get to that step 3, trying to emerge as the butterfly in terms of giving their spiritual self what it needs from this experience, this life, this incarnation. First off, because they don't even think that side of them exists with the ego and the body dominating. That's why the Not Milk, say over the last 15 years, has worked so hard getting people to think how the lifestyle choices, are so important. And that's how you define yourself with your pronouns. And I probably don't need hobo code for this, but we'll do like in Bueller, President Reagan initiated blank economics, voodoo, we'll do blank or orientation, sexual blank orientation and choices. And see, the more the Not Milk gets populations to focus that is so important, the other arm of the Vitruvian man doesn't even exist. There was focus on body and ego and all the things of this world 30, 40 years ago. Now it's times 1,000 on steroids. It's all it is. Their whole world is body, ego. And the other side of the Vitruvian man doesn't even exist. And anybody knew that's the spiritual side or the spiritual arm. But in 99% of the population, all that exists are the things of this world, attached to this world in some way, derived from this world. Ego, part of the brain that thinks in English. Body, the rewards that it can give you, the metrics of how it measures your success. Why people in the first day of the job, the first thing, they declare their pronouns and then they say their lifestyle choices. What is it? Is that really how you should lead who you are, define your entire spiritual whole? And these people, who knows, they don't even have a non-spiritual side. You're going to lead by how you like to rub up your skin against what kind of skin. Is that really what matters in this life? You know, skin against skin. I got skin, and I'd like to rub my skin against this type of skin, or the person that has this pronoun and this type of skin against skin. That is what, I take it back. I'm going to throw out this entire channel, and I will define myself by that in the future. I've been wrong. Matt, where did that come from? I'm going to tell you. It's not in the book. I'm going to take 1 minute and tell you. I knew a guy in my mid to late 20s, I guess, or early 30s. His name was Pat. And I knew him for about 5 years through another friend. We were at a party once, and I don't know if he had too much to drink, or the scenario. He was going to go off with this girl, or maybe it might have been a guy. I don't know. I was not happy. Pat, you don't want to do that, dude. You don't want to do what you're about to do here. And he just looked over at me, and I looked at him, and I'm like looking in his eyes, and he just was, are you going to say something? And he just goes, it's just skin. I mean, what? What did you, it's just skin. What? And then he went on to explain something like, whatever I decide to do, or if Cindy Crawford came in and she was interested in you, Matt, for some 1 in a billion coincidence, at the end of the day, we're all doing the same thing. It's just skin against skin. And if you think about it like that, what does it matter? And I was like, I got nothing to say back against that. Have fun. One more thing from Zane's email before I go back to the book. He even, I think he said, did he say something like even Down syndrome people? I mean, they're the happiest people. And I have to reread what he said, but my interpretation of it here, just communicating to you, is first of all, they're happier than all of us. I mean, that is, who knows what type of incarnation that is. Could be much higher than you, or me, of course, is what I'm saying. Saying they're doing the work potentially in a completely roundabout way. Down syndrome, happy person. They're not going to see not milk. Not going to stress about they're going to poison the next round of punky boosters. And but they're doing the work potentially in their own way. Very interesting. Thank you, Zane. We'll continue to talk about it. The entire reality will appear fake to those spiritually separating from what we call the ship of fools, like you and I are. At the same time, that same reality could be 100% quote real to your friends on the ship of fools, at least at the outer ring layer. Does it really matter if that is actual or imagined? That's the thing. In terms of the reality that they are experiencing the ship of fools, does it matter if it's actually a different reality or imagined? And does the imagination of it make it real? I mean, we basically all arrive at the same place. Is there a difference? This may explain the stuffed Lenin of Schrodinger's cat in superposition. The cat, in this example we've all heard, is both dead and alive at the same time until the observer opens the box and all that mumbo-jumbo bullshit. It's a roundabout stuffed Lenin, in my opinion. So how far do you want to take this? How far could reality take this? Is the mall event that we look at, the school event, the whatever the event, the Elon Musk X event, the NASA event, is it okay that to us, this what we're looking at here, whatever it may be, this is a joke. There's no way. But is it real to Tony or potentially fake to me at the same time? Maybe. I don't take anything off the table at this point. Anything's possible. It's an interesting concept we'll explore going forward. But we don't need to know these things for sure to again succeed in part 2. The worry about yourself activities. This is irrelevant whether Tony's reality at least the outer ring is the same or completely different than mine. We have two realities being presented at the same time, two different types of entities, or the same type of entity at different layers or levels. Young soul, old soul. Doesn't matter because, again, the worry about yourself activities in part 2 have nothing to do with turning back and looking at the screen. We know that energy is created for the not milk on Earth via polarization, camps, duality, friction, getting people pissed off, putting them into certain emotional states like fear, etc. The emotional energy of real beings and real spirits seems to travel out in some way through the ether to become an energetic Big Mac for this son of a bitch we call not milk. This right here is another issue I have with the touchy, shiny, happy, boot at the gas pump type people interviewed. And I acknowledge now, per Zane, they're doing the work. But here's the difference. Here's where I have a problem, and you probably do too. It would be one thing if all those people in those interviews turned to me and say, Matt, we're well aware of the dark thing here. We chose to turn away from it a long time. You're the son of a beach giving it energy every day. We see it. Okay, but what am I supposed to? We've turned away from it. We don't give it any energy. If they said that, I'd shut up and say, you guys are way ahead of us. I don't think they say that. Again, I don't know. I haven't watched a lot recently. They don't seem to understand it. Okay, if somebody could convince me, they all see it, I don't think they do. Okay, I don't think they do. If they acknowledge it and say, we've turned away from it, we're way ahead of your ass, they don't seem to even understand it. And it is so nasty it in terms of what it does to entire population, so many different ways. It is pure evil. Then I'm not going to give any groups any credit until they at least say I'm aware of it and I'm moved past it. I mean, because I don't know. Is ignorance truly bliss in this regard? We'll continue to talk about it. The 1975 or so Miller Lite beer commercial showing a bar full of people arguing with each other about, what I've said a million times, less filling or tastes great may be an unintentional truth drop of enormous proportion. From the first airing, everybody watching the commercial understood very quickly how pointless the argument was, how meaningless it was to be the winner of the argument, to see immediately there will be no winner. Every commercial, people in the bar screaming at the other group in the bar, no, this beer, the best thing about it is it's less filling. No, it tastes great. And nobody ever says, I was wrong. I'm going to come around to your side. And it doesn't matter. It's all subjective. There's no point in winning it. They were so intent on winning. Okay, these commercials went on and on and on, mostly during NFL football games in the 70s. We can interpret the message, or at least I do, as some sort of truth drop. Not that it was intentionally put there for real spirits. No, but we can still interpret it any way we want, and it doesn't matter with the writer, the director, the producer, the commercial. It doesn't matter. These messages can come out all different places. And in most cases, the writer or the director is not aware of the message that we take away from a certain form of art. I have to call this art. It does classify, as dumb as it is. This argument of screaming, less filling, no, tastes great. We know it could not be won, mostly because the camps of tastes great or less filling, they're based on subjectivity and what the individual desired from their beer. The key is the beer is always going to be two different things to two different groups at the same time, forever, without anybody coming to the other side. The argument is trench warfare without the trenches moving forward ever. Screen reality, the outer ring, Mr. Fake, whatever, when one places their attention there, it might not be much different than this bickering back and forth in this beer commercial. In thousands of things related to the screen, the tastes great or less filling type scenario may exist in the reality bubbles of the two different people that are observing the screen reality. However, it seems to go beyond simple subjectivity. It's a strange idea, but it's possible that separate, quote, facts, end quote, exist at the screen level for two different people at the same time. We've seen this most prominently with the Splat Turf, Hobo Code, Splat Turf investigation of shape, where reality can seemingly show a researcher almost anything they truly want to find out about the shape of the Earth. No real world could keep doing this. A person in the truth community may be absolutely sure a certain event is, say, cake in a lake. Yet, can that argument be presented to their family and ever be won? No, it can't ever be won outside of our own circles, people that see things the same way that the researcher would. Just as the person who yells tastes great will never switch sides and go over to the less filling people in the beer commercial. The reality giveaway is to notice that whatever we see or our argument, whether it be Splat Turf or whatever, can never be won outside of our own circles. Our argument with normies can never be won. It is a reality giveaway symptom. Every so often there's somebody in our community that comes to me and it's like, Matt, I've woken a ton of people up in this regard. Bullshit. If anybody's woken anybody up, there's two different groups. One group cannot be gotten to ever, in my opinion. But let's just say somebody started talking to me in the late 90s Now, would you say Matt was destined to kind of eventually come into our group and see things the way we see them now, and I was slated for that? I don't want to call it destiny. If somebody started presenting certain things to me in the 90s, in the 90s, working for the big insurance company in Los Angeles, I was a Matrix child. I believed in the news, and the government's just there to help and all that stuff. But if somebody started talking to me, somebody who is destined, I don't know what else to say, to see through this stuff eventually, I probably would be quite receptive to it, I would think. And I wouldn't just do earmuffs and run in the other direction the way a lot of people do around us. I'd be like, well, I don't know. I've never heard that. I don't know. Tell me more about it. I'd be open to it. So the person coming across me saying, I can wake people up. There's this guy, Matt, that's all of a sudden interested in everything I have to say. There's two different types of groups. Once somebody has proven that they are a palace guard, a defender of reality. Someone like my aunt, for example, who I may have mentioned in the past, the famous words where we're going back about the spying and the smart devices are listening. And eventually they all come forth with the script that, well, when they get boxed in, well, in the end of the day, I have nothing to hide. So if it ends up saving lives, then it's okay. Whatever. Let them steal whatever personal information they need. If it ends up saving lives, I'm not doing anything wrong. I have nothing to hide. That's the script. Once somebody demonstrates that they're a little downloaded, or they run the scripts, or they're a palace guard or defender of reality, once they dig in a little bit, you cannot wake them up. It's a metaphysical property here. But there's still some truth. People are like, I wake these people up. No, you don't. Bullshit. Is that the same? Somebody that digs in, and we're like coming across somebody like Matt, me, in the mid to late 90s, where I might say, well, that's interesting. I'm not sure I buy it, but talk to me about it. Somebody like you, me, we would be open to it. I don't like the word destined, but we were destined to come into truth, to eventually see the darkness here. That there's two different types of people here. If it's that other group, like my aunt, no, metaphysical impossibility. I don't buy for a second any truther ever said, I got through to those people. Bullshit. Can Matt ever take his views on the Kennedy two asses in a nation to his family, say, at the Thanksgiving table, and ever be successful in convincing Uncle Joe of his ideas by the time the ice cream is served? Of course not. Uncle Joe will throw potatoes at me if I'm trying to convince him of anything that he labels as conspiracy. However, I'm sure I'm right about many of my observations that I'd like to speak to Uncle Joe about, just as you're sure you're right in your observations. But guess what? Uncle Joe is sure too. And again, the main point here is not to get in the weeds too far, but what if the outer ring of reality generated by the screen is not exactly the same for everyone? We assume this absolute rigid objectivity exists, and it likely or may not. Our closer in rings of reality between me and Uncle Joe, not just our personal reality bubbles, but the closer in rings, the neighborhood or the town or what's out the window, that's likely all the same between me and Uncle Joe and everybody else at the Thanksgiving table. The dog is tied up outside in the same way to everybody sitting at the table. There's not somebody down the end where there's a Tyrannosaurus Rex outside tied up, and that reality is different. The closer rings likely are exactly the same. The closer rings don't have not-nilk manipulation, or it could be simply the way the reality works. Per our reality concentric rings diagram, more fluid as you go outward, more fake, more corrupt, more strange things, Mandela effects, etc. The local weatherman, the person, not the Teismism group from the late 60s, but the person that says it's going to rain or snow. It's the same person. We see it, me and Uncle Joe, in the same way. The rings are closer. All right. The inner rings in this reality are very consistent. I don't see a plate of turkey right in front of me, and Uncle Joe sees 10 Big Macs stacked up at a Happy Meal. Okay, that's all the same. But as you move to the far outer reaches, what most people would call facts could be different. This almost seems to be one of the main tricks of the not-nilk. Meaning, if it can get people to willingly bring their entire attention all the way out to the screen, again, which is farthest in our concentric rings diagram from their personal reality bubbles. They have to choose to do that. The tentacle can't come all the way in. If they take their attention all the way out, then at that level, it seems like it can serve up almost a different reality. It has domain at that level. It's the master of its domain at that level. It needs you to go out there, though. Then it can start to serve up its menu and what it wants. Doesn't it seem like the entire reality is set up to always draw the attention the farthest out from yourself, not interaction with real people, social media through a screen, and then that makes it bigger and gets it closer to the screen's dominion or domain. Now, I'm not talking about this exactly accurately, of course. I mean, how do you talk about this? We'll get better over time, but you sense probably, as I do, this is generally a main tactic. Why is it always drawing our attention out? Not just for the loosh energy, because it controls. Then it's in control. It then has the buttons and levers. It then is your bus driver. There's something to this, and we'll explore it more. I'm not going to push all my chips if I go to Vegas. That two different realities exist between me and Tony, and I know that for sure. But it does, as we examine this, it does seem like that is becoming more and more possible, if not probable. There could be a lot of other factors to consider. Who's an old soul? Who's a young soul? NPC, different types of entities. Here, we don't know how many different types there are here. They may interpret the outer ring of the screen differently than, say, we do, because what comes from that layer is like a spell. And the intended spell that comes from that layer, we know, does not work on us. What does the hypnotized person see in front of them versus somebody that is not hypnotized? They see two different things. Everything in this universe is information being presented before consciousness. Information being presented before consciousness. Consciousness may vary entity to entity, and then there are tools consistent inside this reality used to interpret the information, like the eyes and the reflection of light and the aspects of light and other senses. Okay, this means that both of us, me and Tony, may be correct at the same time in terms of the information that is interpreted in its final form. My processing of information isn't necessarily more just and correct. He's processing the information in the same way that's no less, quote, just, if that makes any sense. Now, in the end of the day here, this is not relevant to the worry about yourself stuff for the part 2. Don't misinterpret what I'm saying. Matt's running around saying we all live in different realities. I'm keeping it on the table. I don't know. Okay, we're just floating ideas. This is, if anything else or nothing else, this is an exercise in thinking big. Don't expect everybody to agree with every bit of horse shit that I throw out. So in terms of where we are right now, what truly is important? Well, nothing that in the past we felt was important is important any longer. Is it important to be able to take our arguments public and win rounds of debate against normal people, Matt? No. We can so easily see now that type of thing, winning arguments, it just wants us to engage in that all day long. It's far more important to see, once again, that we are continuously being baited to play that game. Our truth community is always tricked to dig in and then research and more research, then take a side. Each aspect of that is losing to the not milk. Screaming that, quote, something is fake, something may be fake, patent and paid, threatened and paid. How does that happen in the brain? Maybe somebody cut my corpus callosum. We know now that screaming all day long that something is fake and everybody's patent and trade will always be taking the other side from what our friends and family believe a certain topic to be. Both sides are losing the not milk's game if they dig in on either side. Well, Matt, should we not care then if something presented on the news is fake? No, we shouldn't care one damn bit anymore. Matt, should we not investigate to see how it was done and how they pulled it off? No. At this point, we should never bother to investigate anything ever again to see how it was done. It has revealed its true nature to us over the past 10 years, and in a way that's so obvious and pathetic, it has given itself away. It's like a man who follows around his wife every Saturday night. 400 Saturday nights in a row. 400 in a row. And every time he follows her, he sees that she's with a different one of the Philadelphia Eagles every single time. So you say, where you going, Fred? I'm going to go follow my wife. Well, don't you know what to expect? What the heck's he doing out there Saturday night? Didn't he just do it? What do you think's going to happen tonight? The same damn thing. Well, why do we keep doing it? This is what the truth community does. We're Fred. There are no answers to be found out on the screen anyway. Just more yellow steaming breadcrumbs that it will use as energy pills if you pop one in your mouth. If you really want to feed something, drive to the lake and feed the ducks. One of the biggest false arguments by the researchers of, say, the splat turf shape, one of the false arguments they've been pushing for the past 15 years or so has been, you guys don't understand. This research, when we get our breakthrough, is so important and so just because if people will finally if they can be made to see what we see, then their entire house of cards will collapse. Okay, they generally see not milk the way we do, of course. There's something evil here. But the way to get, the dragon has one scale missing, and the way to get that arrow, to have it all come down, is through splat turf research. Because surely it's proven and everybody will eventually come around and see it. Now, we now see that this attitude was completely wrong, completely falling for the trick more than any other. And I don't blame them for when they started it. We didn't understand how the reality worked back then either. But they should understand now that no, it doesn't matter how mega their breakthroughs are in terms of their research. It's the nature of reality itself. The other side or the other group of friends and family will never come around, no matter what their research yields. The nature of this reality cannot be understood through normal or pedestrian means, saying someday we'll have the breakthroughs we need. They don't understand how the reality works. It does not play by those sets of rules. It does not play fair. This means even if they are proven to be completely correct, definitively, by, say, our standards, or by an open-minded person like us looking at their research, it's not just a matter of time, as they believe, before they can get people to see what their research, the fruits of their research, have revealed about the shape of the earth, for example, or there's 1,000 other topics. The reality does not work that way. It's a perpetual set of false breadcrumbs and false hope that people will be made to see. It's completely playing the not milk's game. It's operating in the weeds. The only thing one can accomplish here is not breakthroughs to bring down the system. It's things for yourself. That's all we can accomplish here. And that can only be done when the in-the-weeds research, of which splat turf research is the definition of in the weeds, along with Tartaria, along with mudflood. That in the weeds stuff needs to be traded for the 100,000-foot perspective, and then that part 2 needs to be transitioned to part 3, or step 3, completely walking away from it, which is, in the book, part 2. Sorry to confuse you. Guys, the sheer amount of topics that this conspiracy generation machine can produce, can float out as breadcrumbs, so obviously gives the entire reality away at this point. I don't know why everybody can't see it, even outside the truth community. But even in the truth community, 95% can't see it. If you are entrenched in mud flood research, you can't see it. Remember those conspiracy posters or charts with all the different topics crammed on one poster, and it just looks like maybe there's just 1,000 things, and this line goes here, and this is connected to this. I mean, just inside general categories. there are like 100 subcategories. Okay, throw a dart. General category of aliens. What do you have inside that? Specific research areas that people become experts and spend thousands of hours on. Oh, this group over here, they're an expert on Area 51. Let me tell you what really happened. What I believe in Area 51. And did the ship really crash or not? Or no, it's just a guise for something else. And here's what's being held there. And you have a whole subsegment there. Then you have, no, this is what the different types of aliens are. The blue avians, the grays, all the different things presented over all the years on Project Camelot. Then over here, you have experts on alien abduction and what that's all about. And then you have over here, you have Mothman, which is inside alien. I mean, the inside, here's an expert on what the government's covering up and why they're revealing or trying to get everybody interested in the military having UFO sightings in the last few years. And here's what they're holding back in terms of classified documents. Inside one category, there's 1,000 things. And you've got mud flood and Tartaria and come on, it just goes on and on. And we'll look at the damn conspiracy posters again. So, I mean, guys, this is a joke. I mean, in every sense, somehow in this reality, that brand of research is somehow being maintained and not, I mean, there's always some extra breadcrumbs so people stay interested in the topic, whether it be Bigfoot or anything of these 1,000 topics. This gives reality away. How many topics somebody said, this is somewhat interesting to me. I'm going to research the bloodlines of just pick anything. King Prince Charles, he admitted that he has Transylvanian Count, let's just say, Vlad the Impaler bloodlines. That was admitted or said in public by Prince King Charles. Okay, he said it, not me. Okay, let's say somebody is interested in that, and then they go to do the research, and they announce to reality they're interested. Is there anybody, and that's a bad example, let's just say any example, where they said, well, no, I went off to research it, and I didn't find anything, and I'm done. You're done? Yeah, that's it. I spent 4 or 5 hours and I'm done. There was really no trail there. In terms of what you would call a conspiracy topic, has that ever happened? No. There will always be something. If you want to go find that the earth is hollow, like that guy I knew in Florida, I told you about this guy, that he's not alive now, his name was Alan. Before the internet, he was doing all sorts of hollow earth research, had all this stuff. If you announce to the world, this is what I'm interested in, this conspiracy topic, it's metaphysically not possible that, hey, what are you back from the library so soon? And before the internet, well, there was really nothing. No, it will generate it, falsely generate it. I mean, it's not possible. The amount of topics. Okay, guys. I mean, that by itself, false world. No secret society groups could be pulling those 1,000 conspiracy topics off. No trilateral commission working with the Council on Foreign Relations and the Bilderberg. Welcome to Bilderberger, home of the Bilderberg, and the Bohemian Rhapsody Grove. No. Conclusion is simple. Fake world, folks, that's trying to keep you from what you're supposed to do in your life and incarnation in part 2. It's 2 sentences. What does your inner knowing tell you, your inner tuning fork? If you're jumping into a certain conspiracy and you're researching it, pick one. Is that really where you need to be? What is your inner knowing? Even the first grade truthers that are here, what is your inner knowing tuning fork? Come on, you can say it. They know. That's from my cousin Vinny. Say, yeah, I'll admit it. There's something inside me saying this is a false set of breadcrumbs and it's not what I should be doing. It's obvious at this point. Come on, first grade truthers. Spitballers in the back. Get your head out of your ass. Stop with your endless research. Well, what if it's a structure, Matt, a giant pyramid or a megalith? Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. Just because it can be dropped, a brick that's part of the structure can be dropped on your foot. That makes it real. I'm sorry. I'm going to take the whole channel down. Now, if there's a brick associated with a structure, then that makes it real. What was I thinking? I'm going to take the whole channel down, and I apologize. I do not approve this message, and I'm deleting every single video. Thanks for listening.